So for you guys, a lot of fundamental needs on the roster. Can only address so many in one fell swoop. And we've talked to you obviously since the draft class, but for the audience who's going to get to know these players over the course of the next couple of months before they actually see them in preseason games, or those of you who get to attend training camp and things like that, what are they getting in this new draft class from top to bottom?
I mean, you're getting guys that love football, that are passionate about the game football. They all play with a level of physicality and toughness, and they're finishers. All guys that finish, that fit our acronym of being a dog. They all embody it, and 5 out of the 7, their names start with J. So they all, I guess we like J's.
Well, it's funny you mention that because we were just talking about corners, and who knows what'll happen this year. You never know how our season is, but Jarvis Brownlee fits that to a T.
Yeah, another South Florida boy.
Yep.
My wife, where she's from, is literally around the corner from where he grew up. So he was a guy that we brought in for a visit. And he, like you said, he embodies that.
Oh, man, does he?
He's going to fit that room perfectly. But more than anything, he's a young guy that can play outside, that can play inside.
Yes.
He can play the nickel, and he can play special teams. So if he's not in the lineup, playing on defense, he gives us that same mentality on special teams.
Super competitive. Super competitive.
What question are you more tired of? Anything involving green dot or switching sides?
The green dot question.
Okay. So help me ask smarter questions. How should we be talking about the competition that you guys have with your linebacker room and how Cedric Gray factors in?
That's perfect. Because somebody's going to call the plays. You know what I mean? Like, that's just inevitable. But again, like, I understand the question about the green dot, especially with the Z's, going over to Houston and him having a green dot. But that's another example of Aziz was our will backer last year. And so it's not necessarily always the Mike that has to make the call. And so Gibby is more than capable of doing it. Cedric Gray is more than capable. I even think K9 can do it. Kenneth Murray, sorry. And then, Amani Hooker's hit me up asking for his opportunity, because there have been a few safeties around the league that have called, defense, and that's hard because you got to turn, run, sprint. Now you got to get back, and be able to call the plays. But it's really all about the person. I think I've said it before. I've been, with a young guy in Fred Warner who called it as a rookie, but it also lends back to what Greg and I were talking about earlier with the center and the quarterback.
Yeah.
If you put that on a young rookie, it's kind of the same thing as putting all that on a young quarterback because he's now – I remember having conversations, with Fred as we're breaking down the upcoming opponent and finding little tips and tendencies for him, run pass keys. And I remember as a rookie, Fred's like, hey, man, I got way too much on my plate to add that to it, because he had to get people lined up. He had to call the defense. And also be able to make checks based off of what things are, how things were happening. So whoever does it will be more than qualified to do it for us.
Yeah, it's funny. Were you with the Niners when they drafted Warner?
Yes.
Because, as you remember, he played a lot of different positions in college. He was not just a stack backer.
No, at all. He never played in the box. He was more like a big nickel.
Yeah, he almost was, because I remember watching his tape, and he played over the slot a ton.
Yeah.
So when you looked at Cedric Gray's tape, because I watched probably 7 or 8 games, what stood out to you watching Cedric Gray?
His athleticism, his ability to move laterally, his short area quickness and burst to close, and, he'll strike you. And then, his length. So much of the game now is generated about length from a block protection standpoint to get some of those bigger bodies off of you. But as teams and these offenses are evolving, a lot of teams throw the ball a lot between the numbers. And to have a guy in the middle with such good length, puts the quarterback in windows where you got to, get the ball over, those outstretched hands. I remember back when I was playing and we would play a Baltimore team, you couldn't throw the ball over the middle because you had to get the ball between Ray and Ed Reed.
Right.
Those were areas where you're like, yeah, we'll just stay away from that.
Pretty good, yeah.
Because that margin of error was really small. And that was the way we built our linebacker core in San Francisco, and that was one of the reasons we moved, Fred to Mike, because Fred's 6'3", He's got length, and you guys kind of see he's one of the best coverage, linebackers, in the league, and not because he's, not just because of his athleticism, but because of his brain, his length, and the way he understands the game.
So, do you think a guy like Cedric Gray falls to, because fourth round, right? Wasn't it fourth round?
Yeah, fourth round.
Does he fall there because of this stacked backer position, which is essentially what he is not viewed as a premium position? Or you think there are other reasons that have more to do with his play because, I watch his tape, and he's a really rangy guy. Yeah. Obviously, I can't do what you do the due diligence you do. I'm not talking to the coaches,
right.
Because there are times, I don't know if he's told to kind of just see it and go, because there are times he looks a little undisciplined, but there's other times he looks really special.
Yeah, for whatever the reason, I'm glad that reason was out there because we were able to get him in the fourth.
Yeah.
So I appreciate whatever narrative they put out there. One thing I know about the kid, he was a 3-year starter. He was a 2-time captain. And so he has those leadership qualities. But like you said, you don't fully know and fully understand the way these guys are taught to play defense. We just know based off of what we're looking for that he fit the criteria perfectly for what we need out of our stack backer.
When you bring up the idea of narrative, draft rumor stuff, you guys are as affected by it as the audience is, having to work their way through misinformation, what's real, what's not. How do you kind of manage that, having done this through so many years and having done it in so many different capacities?
You don't, because honestly, it's no one's in the room with you, and unless you're telling somebody specifically, no one knows what you're thinking. No one knows what the inner circle, is thinking. So it's always just a bunch of rumors. And if you start subscribing to it, then you run yourself crazy. But obviously we still pay attention to what's being said because sometimes there's some truth to it. But you have to have the wherewithal of when to turn it all off because, the misinformation starts, and you have that going. And that allowed us to be in position at 7, which was a kind of a weird spot to be in this year. Just what would be available, but us in our research and staying true to how we stack the board put us in a prime position to be able to get JC in 7.
Well, I guess kind of walk us through that if you would, because Alt goes at 5 to the Chargers. What's the feeling in the room? Because I don't know if he would have made it past you guys, Joe Alt, if it would have been Alt or Latham either way. But kind of how can you, if you could set the scene, I guess.
So for us, we knew how the first 4 picks were going to go, right? It was going up
even
and down.
with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, it's hard to pass up a talent like Junior, and it would take. I'm not speaking for Monty, but it would have probably took a pretty strong ransom, to make him have to be able to sit in front of his fan base and be like, oh, well, they gave us 4 first-round picks. That's why I passed on him, But for us, the draft started at 5. Right, and for us, we figured or knew that the Chargers were going to take a lineman, and we knew that it was either going to be 1 or 2 guys. It was going to be JC or it was going to be Joe, and we felt like, depending on if it had been JC, then we thought maybe the Giants could take Alt, at 6. We knew that was a possibility because they have guys on their team that they could kick inside the guard and play him at tackle or what have you, but the overall pressing need we felt like at the time for them was receiver. And so we knew that it was Neighbors, but we knew going into that 7th pick that 1 or 3 players that we coveted that was highly ranked on our board would be available to us.
Neighbors goes at 6. How much consideration, if any, was there given to the other wide receivers? Because this is obviously a very talented draft class at that position.
No, 100%. It was a super talented draft class at receiver, but we stayed true to our board. And it was one of those rare occurrences where a need and best player available on your board kind of all matched.
So you guys had Tavondre Sweat in the 2nd round. Interesting guy to talk to for the first time on Zoom. I'm looking forward to interviewing him when we get a chance to meet with the rookies. I guess that's next week coming up, rookie minicamp.
Yeah, rookies will be in next week.
So pros and cons of Sweat. You've obviously talked about that before, how thorough the vetting process was for you guys because you wanted to make sure that you knew the person that you were getting and that he was aware of the situation that you were prepared to put him in. For the audience who may not have heard that entire discussion, the trip down to Houston and the importance of that in particular, or to Texas to visit with him and his family.
No, it was one of those for us where So Tavondre had the incident that occurred, and it happened on a Saturday, Sunday, whenever it was, and then he visited us Monday. And so when we brought him in, for the young man, he wanted to talk about it, and he wanted to plead his case and and accept responsibility for his part, but he wanted people to know the details and the facts because he felt like it was misrepresented, in the media. And so, when we brought him in, we were able to meet with him, talk balls, but it felt like a lot of the talk was about the incident. And so, we got together, and I just thought it would be, a deal where we should go meet him on his own turf, where he's comfortable, and get to know the kid a little bit more, and not only get to know him, but let's meet the family. Let's meet the people that that he's around, that he surrounds himself with. And so a few of us, we jumped on the plane and went down and had breakfast, with Tavondre and his brother, his grandfather, his mother, and we were able to sit down and kind of just talk about the pros and cons. What he's going to face, whether it's us or another team, what he's going to face, the questions he's going to have to answer, and how important consistency is going to be, for him. And so after that meeting, we were there. I think we got there around 9:30, and we left at like 1:30, and we felt really good about it. And then, when we met a couple more times as a staff, to just continue to see if anyone else had any questions, any other things that we needed to get answered from him. And then as we're getting there on the clock, at the start of the second round, we knew that receivers were going to go pretty early, right? And you knew there was going to be a run. You knew there was going to be a small corner run that was going to happen. But you knew as soon as one of those defensive tackles were taken, it was going to be another run, on defensive tackles. And we kind of earmarked a certain spot of like maybe we move back here, pick up an extra pick, and he might still be there. But we had a couple teams that we knew if we went below them, then we could, possibly lose out on them. And so, pick 36 happens. I think Washington trades in. It takes Johnny Newton. And so it was like, okay, you look at the board, you're like, yeah, we need to stay put and do it. And it was, at the time, it was a consensus in the room that he was the guy. And so, we pulled it off. And I was talking backstage. I don't know if Robbie's in here. Robbie's somewhere in here. At some point, we'll release the extended version of the phone call. But let's just say Mom and I, we have an agreement as it pertains to Tavondre.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. What did you see when you put on his tape? Because I really liked his tape a lot. I mean, I didn't know much about him. I don't see a ton of Texas games. I'm kind of an SEC watcher usually on Saturdays.
Well, they're about to be in there, Greg.
Yeah. But they haven't been. But so he was kind of virgin territory for me when I put on his tape, and I was really impressed. And then I did research on him, and as you know this, he came to Texas at 6'3", 249. He wasn't like a big guy, when he was a younger guy.
I got him at 366. What the hell?
Yeah, but when he went to Texas,
When he first went,
yeah, he was 6'3", 249.
and he was 17 years old.
Yeah. So it's not like
he
he grew up as a big, and I don't mean to use this word in a negative way, but he didn't grow up as a big fat kid. He was 6'3", 249, and when he went to Texas. And I was kind of blown away by how quick he was with his feet. He did, can he hold the point? Yes, but he was much more than that, I thought.
Yeah, and I think that's what the people will see, because you have an image, like Buck said, at 366, that he's just a two-gapper, he's a plugger. You're not moving him off the point, but he has the quickness.
He does.
To attack a gap, work an edge, and then he's so strong and powerful. You don't think of him as a pass rusher, but he can push and collapse the pocket with that long arm.
I agree.
And get there and just crush the center. He may not always get there, but he's going to affect the pocket, make the quarterback move off the spot, which is only going to help, a guy like Jeff out. And it was so cool that we drafted him, and we're all standing around, and we're high-fiving and bro-hugging and doing everything else. And then I could feel my phone buzzing in my pocket, and I look, and it's Jeff, Jeffrey Simmons. And I pick up the phone, and first thing Jeff said was, "Thank you." He said, "Thank you." And so,
Y'all like that, huh?
Yeah.
And from there, in typical Jeff fashion, was, "Hey, let me get his number. Let me get his number. I want to call him. welcome him to the team and let him know it's time to work.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he said he's going to be a Hall of Famer at 355. So I'm looking for these 11 pounds here in the next couple of weeks.
Listen, me too. If he's gonna be a Hall of Famer, look, I will get out there and start working out with him to get him down to whatever weight he's trying to get to.
Well, you've been kind enough to give us some of your time. Some people want to ask you guys some questions if you're down to take a couple.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to form a line off here to Ran's right. There's a microphone set up that they've just turned the stage lights on. So if we could have those of you who have donated to the LLS cause, I told y'all I was going to prioritize. Now, I don't know about this individual in front of this microphone. What the hell?
This is Angelo from Antioch. What's going on, Rand?
What's up, boss? Love the stash.
What are you doing?
What are you talking about?
You're not a part of this.
What do you mean?
I don't know any Angelo from Antioch.
All right, you got me. It's Bert. I produce Ramon, Kayla, and Will on 104.5 The Zone.
Round of applause.
I thought it was Raleigh Fingers.
I don't know who the hell that is.
Stop it.
He's already got too much shine.
Rand, before I get to ask this question, which I did donate $100. It was from Buck's phone about 32 minutes ago.
Do another 100 for me.
What the hell? Hey,
from Buck's phone.
no problem. I know the passcode. Before we get started, I'm not Oprah, but I do want you to reach under your chair because there is a gift for you in there.
What have you done?
You just
that's kind of weird.
Just
Hold on.
reach under the chair.
I mean, you were interviewing grown men in a towel about free agents. Like, I don't think it gets much.
Pull that
I think
bad
we're
boy
going to
down.
out-weird.
What is that? That is a chef hat, my friend, because you have been cooking this offseason. Give it up for Ran Carthon.
How about that?
That's my dude right there. That's my dude right now. All right, so I paid $100, so I'm going to ask.
You didn't pay a damn thing.
Okay, so Buck paid $100, so I'm going to ask a very important question, and I know you probably thought there's going to be a bunch of softballs tonight, but
Nah, let's do it.
I had to get right to it. If you were evaluating Buck Reising as a draft prospect, what would your evaluation be?
The first I would start with character reject. So we take him off the board and he wouldn't be draftable for us.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're not taking the PJ to Evansville, Indiana, go do some vetting?
I think we got all the background we need on Buck to not draft.
That's cool with me. Everybody give it a round for Ran one more time.
I mean, you've seen the Let Rand Cook memes. You got a favorite?
My wife is somewhere in here. She sees the stuff.
Can we give a round of applause for the Carthon family, by the way?
Where you guys? Where are you guys? They're somewhere. Okay, I see them back there. My sons are, I know they're probably mad and bored and whatever. Sorry, Romy and Reese. We're almost done.
Home stretch.
Hey, thanks for coming tonight.
No problem.
How did the kickoff rule change impact your evaluation of return prospects?
No, it's I will say this to start. It doesn't impact it because I think we're all in a place where we're trying to figure it out. We were talking about it the other day. It's not like you're policing in illegal contact or the horse collar tackle or even the hip drop tackle, because those are things that have always been policed in the league. Now you're changing the structural way in which a play is run and that nobody has experience, officiating. So it's going to be a trial and error period, throughout this preseason. You don't know if, are they going to allow the guys to kind of roll off the line, before the ball is, made it to the target zone. How strict and strenuous are they going to be with target zone? And it's a bunch of things that you do, but you're really more focused on how the thing is going to be policed.
Good afternoon.
How we doing?
Pretty good. Come back to Jackson Street, by the way. My question's for Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, you always say that you can tell the identity of a team by how they draft. What did you see with this draft?
Do I always say
Put
that?
you on the spot.
Oh, man. Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think you can by pick one for sure, because there were a lot of options there. And of course, I've said on the radio, and I wasn't in the draft rooms, that I would have taken a receiver, but that would have been me, and who knows whether I would have been wrong or right, but I do know this, and I have said this on the radio, that J.C. Latham would have been my number one choice as an offensive tackle if I was making the pick as an offensive tackle. So therefore, I would be very pleased with the pick, and I think that the way in which he plays says a lot about how probably Ran and the staff see what they want to be, because you're talking about a real physical player who's can dominate in the run game, but he's an athletic bender as well, and there's not many guys on the planet that size that can do that. You know, there's a lot of guys 6'6", 340 that maybe can move people, but they're not athletic benders as well. And I think that so I think that says a lot about the style of play and what he is. And then even with the second pick, when you're dealing with the lines, I think that says how you see your team. And it gets back to what Rand said, which I didn't know he was going to say, obviously, about dog, is you want to be physical on both lines. That's where you want to start, because if you can't do that, then some people feel, and maybe Rand, you feel this way with your staff, that you don't have a lot. If you can't be physical up front on both sides of the ball, then you don't really have a strong foundation of what your team is.
Especially in this division.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be able to block those guys in Jacksonville. You know, from their defensive line.
Yep.
You know, me understanding how D'Amico Ryans wants to play defense. You know, having worked with him those years in San Fran and what they're building. You know, you got to be able to block those guys. And so, I mean, even in Indy, you look what they do. They're building up front. You know, and they've done it, you know, traditionally. I think they took a guard a few years ago in the 5th overall, you know, in Quentin Nelson. So you got to be able to play up front in this division if you want to get out.
I mean, look at the first 3 picks, because you didn't have a third rounder, so Gray was technically your third pick. I mean, it's offensive front, it's defensive front. That's what, and even then when you got to Brownlee, the style of player he is, I mean, you know, he does have good feet, and he can move, obviously, and do all those other things, but you're dealing with a guy that is super, super competitive and just stylistically is kind of a tone-setting kind of player. So, I mean, I think it speaks to just what you said, and like I said, I didn't know you were going to say that, you know, the kinds of players that you want and the way you see your team. You want it to be like that.
Yep.
Jeff seems to like playing that Quentin Nelson guy a little bit.
Just a little.
Who we got next?
Hey, I was just going to say about Devontae Sweat. I think he can be a dominator. But what do you do to make sure he keeps his weight in check so that he can be a super compliment to Jeff Simmons?
So there's a thing in the NFL called the fine system. And so if he wants to part ways with his money, that's on him. But no, I mean, that's true. But everything that we do is to support all of these young men, right? So it doesn't matter if it's him or whoever it may be, because people only think about the weight clause as when they're over. But you have guys that are under, too. You know what I mean? It's like you have a weight that you need to play at. And so our job is to surround these guys with as much resources as possible to make them successful. We'll determine that once he gets in. And
My sheet says 366.
And that is the true answer, because one thing we knew even coming into it, whether he played at 340 or he played at 366, his conditioning numbers didn't change. And he played a ton of snaps,
Yeah.
you know, at that weight at Texas. And so once we get him in, we're going to do a body comp, check bone density, you know, because you hear 366 and you still got a man that's moving, you know, moving 17, 18, 19 miles an hour, you know, in some spurts. You just want to find out where's the sweet spot for him, and we'll figure that out once we get him in next week.
Hey, Rand, I got to tell you, and I know he was drafted in the second round, and this guy wasn't, but I thought he was a better prospect than Jordan Davis.
And Jordan was, and that's the cool thing. It's awesome to hear you say that, first and foremost. But Jordan Davis's D-line coach in Philly was who?
Tracy Rocker.
Tracy Rocker, who's
Tracy
here now.
Rocker,
Yeah.
who's our D-line coach now.
Yeah.
So he has that experience.
See, I think, to me, Sweat is much better laterally than Davis. I think Sweat can learn how to rush the quarterback and then have that be a part of his game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the reasons why, you know, we felt comfortable taking him at 38 because we knew there was still another component of
Without
his
question.
game that he can get to. And, you know, once we get him here and we just teach him, you know, certain things, and you know, T-Rock gets his hands on him, then, you know, we feel like he's going to
Because
be
he
a
made
three-down
plays down the
player.
line of scrimmage, too. He played off blocks. He wasn't just a mountain of a man. He played off blocks and made plays down the line of scrimmage.
And that's why I said I feel there's a box he's put in because you see 366
Oh, and
you don't see the full
Until you watch the
totality
tape.
of what
Until
it
you
is.
watch the tape.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get one more for Ran Carthon. We're going to have more questions with Greg and I, but Rand's got to run. He's got a commitment to keep with his family. So let's get one more for the GM.
Hey, Rand, what in your mind set Fashano and Latham apart? And why, in your opinion, did Fashano fall the way he did? Because at one time he was the number one tackle, supposedly, in the draft.
And see, so what I'll say is he was the number one tackle according to who?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Kuiper, I guess.
So Mel Kiper doesn't work for us, and Buck Rising doesn't work for us.
Oh.
No, but in all honesty, like, and I won't reveal, you know, who was rated where on our board, but, you know, like I said earlier, we went based off of our board and how we had them stacked and ranked. And you know, and Fashano's gonna be he's gonna be a damn good player, you know, in this league. But we went with the best fit for us.
Well, hey, appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you.
and giving us hope.
Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for Ran Carthon, ladies and gentlemen. Wore that hat the entire time he's taking questions. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. Greg will break down more prospects, get a drink at the bar. One more round of applause for the GM. Thanks, man. All right. How's everybody feeling? Oh, come on, you do better than that. Listen, I heard you for Slay. Let's hear it. How you feeling? Okay. A little life here. I know. Home stretch. We got a few more prospects to break down, and we really appreciate you guys hanging out here with us. Nick and the staff at the Analog have done a great job. Can I get a round of applause for them, please? Make sure you take care of the bar staff because they are here to make sure that you guys are having as much fun as we're having. Now, I also want to say a quick thank you to Two Rivers Ford because they made the whole show possible, and then, fortunately, they are also headed to Morgan Wallen after this, so they're double dipping a little bit. But they donated $1,000 to Leukemia Lymphoma Society, so I just want to pay a special, or say a special thank you to Two Rivers, who put the podcast on and who has helped us try and achieve our goals. So we appreciate you guys who have contributed as well. If you've got more questions, Greg is going to do some Q&A here stuff in a second, but we're going to break down some more tape if you're down. All right. So, draft class, 7 players, J.C. Latham in particular. That's the big ticket item, literally and figuratively, because this franchise has been tortured by left tackle Greg for the past 2 years, and they're just desperately trying to get it right.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
I mean, you and I have been talking about a lot of offensive line play for the past 3 years, buddy.
We sure have. And just so people understand, I don't know if, you know, I guess some people maybe follow me. I have no idea. But
And Greg Cosell, he won't plug it, I will.
This is the kind of stuff I do, and I know you can't all see it, that I do for probably 140 to 150 players in every draft class each year. So it's strengths, weaknesses, transition, and other. So basically what I'll do with, let's say, an offensive lineman, because you have to watch full games, and I'm watching the coaching tape because I work for the NFL. So basically, I'm watching 80 plays times 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 games, depending on how many games I want to go through. So I'm seeing a lot of plays. So I'm not watching YouTube highlights. I'm watching the games. And sometimes you can watch one game and you get a sense of the player, and that's the way it turns out to be after you watch 6 or 7 more games. Sometimes you watch that first game and I make notes, and then after 3, 4, 5 games, I go, well, that first game really wasn't representative of what he really has turned out to be. So you have to watch a lot of games, and I don't know what other people do. I only know what I do, and that's the way I have to feel comfortable doing it. I've got to really grind away and watch it, and I really enjoy it. I mean, that's somebody said to me, well, what do you do now? And I said, well, the first thing I'm going to do now is, since last probably July 15th, I've been getting into the office every day at 5:15. That one thing I'm not going to do starting this week is get in the office at 5:15. So, but
listen, this guy does so much carrying of me on the podcast, and really, like, Greg, the reason not to interrupt you, but I was asked, meeting a couple of people that came to last year's show as well, like, do you do this in any other NFL market, like this particular kind of setup?
No, not this. No, I do.
This is unique to Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
For Tennessee Titans fans, you can't get this in any other NFL market. So we really, really appreciate the work that Greg puts in, which is why we're gonna highlight some of that here in particular.
So I'm going to tell you, if you want to start with Latham.
Let's start with Latham.
Just so we start with Latham, in my transition, here was the last thing I typed. I said, overall, my sense is Latham is a right tackle prospect who could make the transition to left tackle. So now, you have to understand, I do all this before the draft. I have no idea who's going to draft him or, what round he's going to go in or any of that, although I thought he was the best overall tackle prospect in the draft for a number of reasons. And, one thing I've learned, and I try to keep learning, and I've been fortunate over the years that I've gotten to know a lot of coaches, particularly O-line coaches. I really like to talk to those guys when I can. There's one in particular who's a really good friend of mine, and 2 or 3 times a year he'll do a 2-hour Zoom call with me, and I learn so much about O-line play. He's been in the league over 30 years. Because O-line is a whole different animal, and no 7 or 8-year-old kid says, I want to play football and I want to put my hand in the ground. So offensive linemen are kind of a different breed.
I don't know, that shady dude with the mustache looked like he might have.
Well, yeah, probably. But Latham, to me, when I watched his tape, number one, the first thing you notice is how strong he is. He's an incredibly strong human being. And the second thing you notice is that he moves very efficiently for a man that size. And I made that point to Ran, and I could see him shaking his head, is there's not a lot of guys that are 6'6", 342 pounds that can bend like that. And the ability to bend with your knees, it's about knee bend, not bending forward. If you bend forward at the waist, you're going to get beat. It's about knee bend, and he can do that. And the other thing that O-line coaches talk about all the time, and they don't have a great reason for it other than the obvious, is that arm length matters for an offensive lineman. So usually the cutoff point is somewhere about 33.5 inches for arm length. So if you're below that, even if you play tackle in college and you may be great in college, the feeling is that you're not going to play tackle in the NFL because arm length matters. Teams do studies like this. I'm one person, I can't do all these studies. But the teams do studies, and they find out that arm length matters. And just so you know, Latham's arms are 35 1/8, which is really long. And the reason that's important is when guys try to rush you, particularly what we call speed to power, where they try to get into you, the longer your arms, you can lock them out. And Latham is a master of that. The joke was with an O-line coach that I spoke to was that speed to power rushers, they go to their death when they try to do that against Latham. He just stops people right in their tracks. Now, he's got a couple of concerns. By the way, the other thing you have to remember is no college player is a finished product. These are still young kids. They've never played in the NFL. So you have to keep that in mind, that when I do this, I have weaknesses for every player that I watch. And they're just, when I say weaknesses, some of them are things that are built into their body structure. Others are things that can be coached. But they're still weaknesses based on watching the present college tape. But Latham, to me, was overall the best offensive tackle prospect in the class. And obviously the Titans took him, so we'll see how it plays out. They are going to move him to left tackle. There will be an adjustment period. Keep that in mind. So understand that, because it might seem like it's easy, but now all of a sudden you kick slide with a different foot. A different arm is your sort of power arm as opposed to when you're on the other side. So there are areas of improvement that'll need to be done, and there are some adjustments that'll need to be made. but my sense is he'll turn out to be a really good tackle.
Well, certainly that's what Bill Callahan, part of Bill Callahan.
And he's really, really good.
He's pretty good. We were just talking about this because rookie minicamp's next week, and we're going to get to talk to the assistants for the first time. So we'll finally.
And
get
I
to
met
talk
Bill
to this.
Callahan in 1996. He had just gotten a job with the Eagles as the O-line coach. Ray Rhodes was just gotten the Eagles job, and on that staff, Ray Rhodes hired Bill Callahan, Sean Payton, and John Gruden. And I met all those guys in 1996. So that's when I first met Bill Callahan.
He's going to be a pretty popular guy, I would imagine, at the media scrums here coming up.
Yeah, he will. He's
big
really
training camp crowd for Bill
He is
Callahan.
really, really good. Really good.
So he doesn't just have J.C. Latham to work with, but in particular, Greg, you put together some plays that you want to break down for the audience. And I'd like to start with the first play on your sheet against Texas in the first quarter. This is a run play in particular that we're going to highlight. J.C. Latham, number 65. He'll wear 55 with the Tennessee
he will?
Titans. Yeah, he seems excited about I don't know who's wearing 65 right now for the Titans.
Oh, okay.
Probably need to look at the depth.
Well, maybe he has a special affinity for 55.
Either way, so in particular, the game versus Texas. Before we show the play, what did you like about
Well,
the tape?
I picked out a whole bunch of specific plays. I picked out some run plays and some pass protection plays, just that I thought really kind of reflected who he is as a player, because he's a really good run blocker. He was probably the most physically dominant run blocker of the main tackle group. You know, this was a really good offensive tackle class in the draft. And Latham was probably the most dominant run blocker, so I wanted to show some run plays. And then we'll see some pass protection as well.
So let's start with that 1st and 10 play in the first quarter, about 4:29 left. If you could throw that up on the screen, Nick.
So he's the right tackle.
Going up against number 88 for
and
Texas.
You can see he eventually puts the guy on the ground. And now we're dealing with Texas, so you're probably dealing with a lot of 4-star and 5-star recruits. And you know, this is what you see. First of all, notice how he comes off the ball. One of the things you look at with offensive linemen in the run blocking game, or what we call base and drive blocks, is you want low to high. So you want to get into your defender low and drive up. And that's the way you generate power in your hips. And offensive line coaches talk all the time about unlocking your hips. That's the way you unlock your hips, by going low to high.
So then the second play that we've highlighted here is a pass play. It comes against Tennessee in particular. Hey, Vols fans got to be feeling pretty good about the Alabama game this year, no? A little more confident? A little more swagger? Big bad Nick Saban's gone? They're still a little, we call it BVS, battered Vol syndrome around here. They're still a little shaky. But it's play number 6 on your sheet there, Nick. Alabama versus Tennessee, a second quarter play, a 3rd and 7, 22-yard completion.
So this is a pass play, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so here you see, look how easily he moves. This is a great example of just, it doesn't look like much, but if you see it, look how easily he kick slides out. Look how he controls his body. Look how easily he look right there, and then uses his hands, very strong hands and arms, and just moves the guy with no problem at all. And that's Tennessee. I didn't know if that was Pierce or not. I don't know Pierce's number.
Pierce is somebody who's going to be
I
looked
know.
at as a top prospect next year for sure.
Yeah, is that 21?
No, it's looks like.
Okay.
The next play that we have also against the Tennessee Vols, another second quarter play, another 3rd and 7 completion. This one.
Well, I'll tell you why I did a lot of third, before we watch this one. One reason I chose a lot of third down
Greg,
plays,
not me.
guys, is in the NFL, you can't be a great tackle if you can't block one-on-one on third down. Because in the National Football League, there's not one offensive coach that doesn't want to send out all 5 eligible receivers on third down. And they do not want to be in a position where they have to help their tackles in pass protection. So if you help your tackles, that means a tight end and a back, either one of them or both cannot be primary route runners, because they have to initially help. And there's no offensive coordinator that wants to do that. So the most important thing for an offensive tackle in the NFL, when push comes to shove, is to be able to block one-on-one on third down. That is the most critical element.
So let's set up this 3rd and 7 play. It's the 7th play on your sheet there, Nick. Alabama versus Tennessee in the second quarter. It's another completion to Jermaine Burton. This one is a 10-yard touchdown.
And again, another third down play. And again, just look how, you see how he stops him? You see right there how he just stopped him in his tracks? And he does that all the time. That's what Latham is. He's so strong, but he's comfortably strong. It doesn't look like he's exerting much effort, but he's just a very comfortably strong player. And he's able to use his arms really effectively.
9 looks like he's stuck in the mud once he gets to Latham. Look at him.
Yeah, right. See, stops him. Yeah, it just stops
Nowhere
him.
to go.
And, I picked good schools, too, because, you get schools like Tennessee, any SEC school, Texas we saw. You're getting a lot of, big-time recruits. So he's playing against quality players here.
Well, and certainly he had some games against Michigan, or a game against
Michigan.
Michigan.
We want to see this run block again. This play we're going to show is against Chris Jenkins, who was a draft choice. He may have been a second-round pick of the Bengals, I believe. I think he was a second-round pick. But Chris Jenkins, number 94, and this is a dominant run block by Latham, and this was a touchdown, a 34-yard touchdown.
Give me play number 10, Nick, if you would, in the first quarter, 1st and 10 against the Michigan Wolverines. You see him up here on
so
the
he's sort
right
of
side
covered
your
by the
screen.
fullback, but you'll see it. And he knows it. He looks back at him because he knows it.
It's a
these
fist bump.
guys know when they handle a guy. That's just the nature of sports. You kind of know it. I mean, that's why sports can be so humbling. You can have a great play and a bad play, and you just got to keep playing. But that's Chris Jenkins, like I said, and he was one of the better defenders on Michigan's defense, which was a great defense, and he was a draft choice. But this is what we call a base block. He goes right into him, and he just takes him right to the ground. So he's a really good prospect. But, like I said, he's going to change sides, and that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period.
And it's going to be an adjustment period for any rookie coming into the NFL.
No question.
Much less switching positions like that, which is something that the Titans worked through with Peter Skoronski last year, the way that you and I talked about. I guess that would have been before their rookie minicamp.
Right.
In 2023. That left side of the line, though, is going to look so much different, Greg, with Latham, Skoronski, with,
and now Cushenberry at center.
Cushenberry.
And Skoronski, I think Skoronski will end up being a really solid player. Whether he's an all-pro remains to be seen. But don't forget. Well, fans, I'm sure, haven't forgotten that. Didn't he have an appendectomy last year?
Yeah, tough to keep the weight on and keep.
And he lost a lot of weight, and you could see it really affected him. He'll be a better player this year.
He looks like a cinder block. In the most recent videos.
Yeah, he'll be a better player this year.
Of practice so far. You want to take a look at Tavondre Sweat? How do we feel about the new Titans defensive tackle?
We talked about him with Ran, and I made a couple of points, based on film study. I was really, really impressed with this kid. I mean, like I said, he came to Texas at 6'3", 249. He obviously, probably didn't have too many salads for meals, but he got up to 366. And, I remember seeing him at the Combine this year because I was on the field at the Combine. And that's when I first I hadn't watched his tape yet. And I watched this guy move, and I said, wow, he doesn't really move like a 366-pound guy. He just moves better. And then when I got back and finally got to watch his tape, I was really, really impressed. And I think this guy, and again, I don't know the kid. So this is the kind of thing, and I'm being honest with you guys, I can't speak to that because, I don't work for a team. So I'm not, as Rand said, I'm not going to have breakfast with the family. I'm not, doing those kinds of things.
Well, you have the Cosell private jet, though, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah, exactly.
The family jet wandering around.
Yeah. So I'm just sitting in my office at NFL Films watching tape, and I was really impressed with this kid. I thought he moved really well. I thought he had light feet for a big man, and I think there's even more to unlock in what he can become. Again, assuming he's a good kid, works. As Rand said, when they get him in next week, they'll start to figure out in their mind what his best weight is. I don't think they'll want him to drop 40 pounds. I think that'll be totally unrealistic. They probably would feel that, my guess is that 345-ish would be a good number, give or take, you know. Because he does move really, really well.
Certainly the 40 time was impressive for a man that size.
Yeah.
So let's throw on some plays of Tavondre Sweat, if we could, Nick. Let's start with the second play on the sheet against Oklahoma in the first quarter is a 1st and 10 play. He's number 93 for Texas there.
You know, the reason I showed this play is he moved, and I mentioned this to Ran. He moves, and Ran knows, obviously, he watched the tape. You know, he moves down the line of scrimmage. He's not just a guy that stands there and just controls one spot. You know, and by the way, this is a play where he's unblocked intentionally because it's an option play, and he's the unblocked defender. But you know, he made a lot of plays like this where he actually had to work down the line of scrimmage, and he moves pretty good. I mean, keep in mind that's a 366-pound man.
That poor running back.
Yeah.
Tough scene. Tough scene. Next play on the sheet for Devondre Sweat. Let's take a look at the 5th play on the sheet against K-State in the first quarter, a 2nd and 10 play here for the Texas defensive tackle.
All right, again, he's number 93, so looks like he's to the right.
Over 54, the guard.
See, that's what he can do. You see how quick his hands are? I mean, he's more than just a guy that, as we say, holds the point and stands there. I mean, look how quick he comes off the ball. Look how quick his hands are. I mean, that's really good hand usage. Boom, look at that. A club and a swim, and it happened so fast, and he just got rid of that guard.
You don't do a lot of player comps unless like you watch a player and you immediately get struck.
And there were some that popped into my head, and these are really good players. And again, I don't want you guys to think I believe he'll be this guy day one.
Sure.
But with how quick he was,
none of them are going to remember that, by the way, and you're going to get tweets about this.
Of course, yeah. Cosell said he's exactly this guy, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I get that all the time anyway. But you think of someone, and I don't know how many of you guys watch a lot of other teams, but think of someone like Vita Vea with the Bucks, who's a big man who moves really well. I mean, he's kind of like that. Maybe even Dexter Lawrence with the Giants, who came out of Clemson, who's about 345, is a big man who moves well. I think he can become like that. Now, does that mean I think he will tomorrow? No. But I think he can become that kind of player.
Vita Vea, in particular, Titans fans had a bit of a traumatizing experience against this year because I've never seen a man that size get walked out one-on-one against a tackle, Andre Dillard, and win that way in a pass rush situation, Greg. It was a pretty tough day for the Titans offensive line.
I got to tell you, what time is it, Buck?
We got time. It's 9:25.
I'm surprised it took 2.5 hours for you to mention Andre Dillard.
I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do it. Greg, we spent 6 months talking about Andre Dillard. I don't want to say his name anymore. I'm sick of it. But in this particular case, the potential there is what makes him enticing. And I know, there was some, and there's always going to be armchair GMing in any situation. But the value of the pick was something that I think was initially questions there because could you get more? Did you know something about him that would allow you to get him at a later pick or whatever?
And
but
we don't
what
know
you
any
see in Devondre Sweat.
That's the thing, is we don't know any of that. And that's why I loved, and Rand wasn't trying to be mean to the gentleman who asked about Fashanu, but when he said, according to who? I mean, ultimately, everybody, including myself, which is why I don't do mock drafts and I don't do lists, I love the process of evaluating. So I don't make a list of this guy, this guy, this guy, because to me, that's unimportant. I just like evaluating. I know all the guys that do, the Mel Kuypers, the Daniel Jeremiahs, the Dane Bruglers. These are guys I know well, and they do an unbelievably great job, but they don't know what teams' draft boards look like.
Sure.
Like a lot of people said when the Falcons, drafted Michael Penix, they could have gotten him here or they reached. Well, obviously the Falcons didn't think they reached because they drafted him. So you don't know any of that stuff. All you can do is evaluate the player. I liked what I saw on tape. I don't get caught up in where I think he should be drafted or shouldn't be drafted.
I want to take a look at one more play that I know you want to
sack.
talk about. The sack. This is a Devondre Sweat 9-yard loss on the sack, number 7 on your play sheet there, Nick, against TCU in the first quarter, a 2nd and 8 play.
So again, I wanted to show this because that's 366, and again, a club and an arm, a club swim as we call it, club and an arm over move. Boom! Look at that. I mean, this guy's a big dude now. Keep that in mind.
I like his shoulder shimmy, too.
Yeah. So, I wanted to make sure you saw this because that's pretty good. So we'll see what happens with this kid. I think it's really good that he's got Jeffrey Simmons to mentor him because Simmons is just one of those guys. He's a special guy and a special player. So, we'll see how it plays out. He actually played right next to another ridiculously good prospect in Byron Murphy, who went pick 16 to Seattle. And Murphy was a great prospect, too. But Sweat was actually the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. So, obviously, the coaches thought a lot of him.
You ready to take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Y'all got some questions for the man? Yeah. Okay, we could do what the hell was that? You guys got some questions for Greg Cosell? There we go. All right, we're going to do it the same way we did for Ran. If you'd make your way to the microphone here. We didn't do this earlier, Greg, but I've been having people play a game on the radio show where I ask them their name and their occupation instead of where they're calling from.
Well, you can do that.
I think I might. What's your name? What do you do?
Randall Shaw. I'm a real estate developer.
Well, thank you for joining us, Randall.
Enjoyed it. What's your hardest position to evaluate?
I think the hardest position, I'll answer that in multiple ways. The hardest position to evaluate can often be safety in college football because you could watch a whole game, and depending on where the safety plays, particularly if he plays deep, he may not get a lot of action at all. And you can go through 3-4 games and feel like, I'm not sure what this guy is, other than, boy, it looks like he moves pretty good. It depends on how a safety is asked to play in the context of a defense. I would say the position, and I'm just being honest with you guys, and this is why I spent so much time trying to talk to as many coaches as I can, the position that I probably feel least comfortable evaluating, but coaches I talk to tell me I'm better at it than I think, but I still never feel super comfortable, is interior O-line. Because it's such a technique-based position, and I'm not a coach. And I don't presume to be a coach. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know every single technique that they're taught and how it's supposed to be deployed. I'm not going to do that. People who listen to me, and I've had even retired players say this to me, they say, one reason I like listening to you, besides how much you know, is if you don't know something, you say it. Because, I can't possibly know everything. I'm not in the meeting rooms, first of all, so there's things I can't possibly know. But interior O-line, because it's so technique-based, I just, sometimes I feel like I'm uncertain when I watch a guy. And, like I said, coaches will tell me you know more than you think, but it's just a comfort thing.
For my money, you're the best.
I appreciate that.
Who we got next? Come on up.
Hi. Thanks for coming here.
Oh, sure.
I was wondering.
Name and occupation. What the hell?
Oh, I'm Van. I'm a real estate appraiser from Chattanooga. I was wondering, have any other teams brought you in and tried to pick your mind for your insight or anything on a contractual basis? I mean, I've seen you in Colin Coward since 2010, and
right.
You've given me so much knowledge and just
no teams have brought me in
game.
like that, but coaches call me, a good amount to talk, draft. I mean, I had a coach. The draft started Thursday, right? Yeah. Got it.
Last Thursday.
What day is today? It's Friday, isn't it?
We're getting there, bud.
I'm totally lost.
I'm trying to get to Saturday.
I'm trying to get back to like a normal life now. So the Monday before the draft, a couple of coaches called me and said, "Hey, we just got to go over some players now. Come on, the draft is in 3 days." So I get that a lot, but I have no teams have quote unquote made me an offer. So which is fine. I love what I do. I'm very fortunate at NFL Films because, contrary to what people might think, I'm not like the head of the company. I'm technically just a worker bee, but they kind of let me do my thing. Because my main thing is my matchup show. That's my job. My real job is the NFL matchup show during the season. And then we do a draft show. And, I've been fortunate because I've been there so long. This will be my 45th season coming up at NFL Films. So they thankfully let me do my thing. And I just love doing this stuff. Like I said, I'm a process guy. I love the process. At the end of the day, I don't care where people get drafted. I mean, I like to hear reasons why, but I don't, it's not like, oh, I hope they draft this guy. I don't think like that. Just like as soon as the draft is over, I don't think about, oh, let's grade the draft. I mean, which is meaningless to me. But I just love this whole process. I mean, I showed you my sheet. If you could see it, that's what I do.
I might send you guys home with some. I got a bunch of copies.
That's what I love to do. And I've already. It's funny because I got into town yesterday, and so Wednesday afternoon, I finished up something, and it was like 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm thinking to myself, okay. And I was really beat because I've been grinding, basically since last July. And I said to myself, okay, it's 2:30 on Wednesday. What am I going to do? And I was this close to starting to watch Carson Beck, who'll be in next year's draft. But I didn't just yet. But I'll probably do that on Monday.
Greg, thank you guys for the questions, and we'll keep them going here in just a second. But Greg, people do these way too early mock drafts. And
I wasn't going to do it from a mock draft, as you know.
I know, but Dane Brugler, who I know you have a lot of respect for.
Oh, I love Dane.
He's got the Titans picking second and Carson Beck.
Picking
second overall. The quarterback out of Georgia, Carson Beck.
Well,
I'm going to have to call him, put him on the radio show next week.
Yeah, I think you might have. Chat. I think you might have to.
I think we're going to have a
chat.
chat.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to call. Yeah.
Who's next?
Howdy. I'm Dave. I'm a personal trainer from South Nashville.
Okay.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you think it was the right move for the Titans to dump Derrick Henry for Tony Pollard for basically the same amount of money?
I do.
Can I ask why?
You can.
Thank you.
I didn't agree to follow up.
Because he went to the Ratbirds, and I'm sure you're aware of how we feel about that
Look
franchise.
at Robert back there fist pumping like he's not a Ravens fan and a sea of Titans fans. Look at him.
I think it's a very easy argument to make that for 5 years, give or take what it was, you could argue Derrick Henry was the best back in football as a pure runner. But I think that it was time to move in a different direction. It was time for the quarterback in this league to become the focal point of the offense and not the running back. I think as long as you have Derrick Henry, you're sort of committed to playing a certain way, and you have to play that way because that's what he is. And I think it was time to move in a different direction. We'll see what Derrick Henry does this year. Baltimore signed him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he'll get a lot. I'm sure he'll get a good number of carries. I'm fascinated myself to see how they see him. In other words, I always felt like he was a volume runner, like he needed to carry the ball a lot. And obviously he did, and he was phenomenal. So I'm curious to see how they use him. But I believe it was time to move on and change sort of the offensive foundation of how you play, given the way the league is.
And you and I have been talking about that for years, it feels
And it's
like.
not a knock on, that's the thing. People are like, on Twitter I get, well, you hate Derrick Henry. That's not what I said,
It's all right, Greg.
Right, yeah. I know you'll probably tweet that out. Cosell said.
I'm going to tag you, yeah. No, I mean, listen, people have forgotten by now that I argued for Deion Lewis over Derrick Henry at a certain point in my career, but we don't have to talk about that now. Who's next? I know.
Josh, I sell beer
Okay.
here in town. Drink Yazoo.
Love beer.
Is there a pick in particular this year that you think is the best that we had out of
all these picks?
Out of all the ones that Titans had this year, what's your favorite?
Ooh, well, I'll tell you who maybe my favorite player was to watch that they picked. That's the only way I can answer it, because obviously you guys know how I feel about Latham and Sweat, so I thought they were really good picks. But I love Jarvis Brownlee from Louisville, because I just thought this kid, and I think I might have said this on the radio the other day, this kid's just a pain in the ass. I mean, he just the way, obviously I didn't know Rand was going to, use the dog acronym, but that's exactly what this kid is. He is an asshole the way he plays. And in a good way, because that's what you want on defense. I mean, this kid is a corner. The reason he wasn't drafted higher is because he ran a 4.54, and normally corners, if you get above 4.5, unless you're viewed as unbelievably great, that drops you, because corners, teams get concerned about what they call your top-end speed, your ability to run with vertical routes. But this kid is super intense, super competitive. Loved watching him play. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot, so he has inside-outside versatility. He tackles. You can tell how important the game is to him just by watching him play.
He was, and motivation is not something that's quantifiable, and these guys have all different kind of reasons to get themselves up for games and what have you. But when he got on the Zoom call with us afterwards, Greg, and said he was just flat out pissed off about falling to the fifth round,
I'm sure.
Feeling that he worked much harder than the corners that were drafted above him. Fair to expect he's going to continue that level of that kind of demeanor.
You
here in
can just
Tennessee.
see the way he plays. I'm going to just look at my notes and see what I said. I said overall, I loved Brownlee's competitive mentality in every phase of the game, and his physical toughness and short area quickness and suddenness as a press man corner, disrupting receivers' routes. I said Brownlee may transition best as a slot corner, but he certainly has the coverage versatility and the physical and mentality traits to play outside. And he started, by the way, he came out of Florida as a 4-star recruit, and he began his career at Florida State, and then he transferred to Louisville to end his career. So he was a big-time recruit.
Let's get one more question for Greg Cosell.
Hey, Greg, it's Frank. I'm semi-retired. Wanted to ask you about Williams. Haven't done much discussion about him at all.
James Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah, James Williams was kind of a hybrid safety linebacker at the University of Miami. He's not going to play safety in the NFL. He'll be.
Why?
He doesn't really have the movement traits to play safety. He's 6'4", 231. He's, the only way he could play safety is in a defense that played literally cover 3 as a foundation on almost every snap, and that he would be the quote-unquote box or overhang player. He's not really a back-end player. He's one thing that's going around the league. I certainly don't know what Denard Wilson's going to do. None of us know that right now, until we start to see what he does. But one thing that's going through the league is a personnel package on defense called Big Nickel, where teams play 3 safeties, and he certainly could play quote-unquote safety in that package. But if you're playing a normal defense, my guess is he would transition to linebacker. There's a guy who's done that successfully within the last 4 or 5 years. He came out of Virginia Tech. His name is Devon Diablo. He was a safety at Virginia Tech. He's been a starting linebacker for the Raiders for the last couple of years. I don't think Williams would start this year. He's going to have to make an adjustment. But I think that's the reason, despite good production in college, he was drafted where he was. Don't forget, he was a 7th-round pick, right?
7th-round pick.
Yeah. That's the other thing you got to keep in mind. Just remember, 7th-round picks.
He was a 5-star recruit, though.
Big-time recruit. Big-time recruit. You're exactly right. I would bet he was a totally dominant player in high school, just how big he was, But keep in mind, 7th-round picks are not automatics to make the team. So keep that in mind. Even the other 7th-round pick out of Michigan, Jalen Harrell, there's something in that kid's body that is there, but he needs a lot of work, but it's there. And he may never get there, and if he does, you're thrilled, and he may end up being a nice addition. But 7th-round picks don't automatically make it.
Well, just on Harrell quickly, Greg, because we haven't talked about him just yet. That Michigan defense is comprised of a lot of guys. I feel like
way too many. I had to watch the same games too many times.
So when you have that in particular, how do you try and I don't want to say remove yourself from the idea of the defense around him versus the individual player, because obviously you've got to see how he operates within the scheme. How much is he benefiting from the guys around him versus how much he's winning himself?
I would say that, in all honesty, that doesn't concern me in the least, because one thing I learned early on when I started doing this from coaches a lot smarter than I am is you have to evaluate the player. So you start by looking at his traits and his attributes. Now, if you're a defensive player, and let's say he's rushing the quarterback, he's still going to have to beat blocks somewhere along the line. So you're going to evaluate him. It doesn't matter, that there's 7 other guys who are going to be drafted. That's irrelevant. It's just like the quarterback. I learned this. I was very fortunate. Maybe the best thing in my career was the fact that I got to know Bill Walsh very well, and he taught me the quarterback position at the highest level. And he would always say, you evaluate the quarterback. People say, well, he's only good because he threw to good receivers. Well, that's not really relevant in evaluating the quarterback. Harrell, it's not really relevant that there were 7 or 8 other guys on the Michigan defense that were at the combine. That's not really relevant. You're evaluating the player. And he's long, he's athletic, but there's a lot missing in his game. So now you wonder, can that be brought out of him because he does have athletic traits? If it can't be brought out of him, he'll be a cut. If it can be brought out of him, he gets kept around, plays special teams, and maybe in a year or two has an opportunity. But, that's the reason he's a 7th-round pick, because there's something there. He did play at the national championship school, a Power 5 school. He was a 2-year starter. And we didn't ask Ran this, but there's a lot of teams that would prefer to take that guy than, let's say, a guy who was more productive at a school that's not a Power 5 school, because they know that this guy played against, higher-level competition.
Did you have fun tonight?
Oh, it's the best. I love being here.
You guys have fun
the
tonight?
Best.
Y'all are an awesome crowd. Thank you so much for coming out and hanging out here with us. Thank you guys so much for the generosity for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I'm looking forward to seeing how much we raised after tonight. I hope that for those of you who are not able to make it and listening to this on podcast or watching on YouTube afterwards, that you make sure you get your tickets when I tell you to next time, because I went pretty fast this year, and we love to see a sellout crowd. Thank you so much to the Analog and the great staff here for having us. One more round of applause for you guys.
Thanks,
as well.
guys. Thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate you guys coming out.
And we'll talk to you on 104.5 The Zone. And by the way, many thanks to the 104.5 The Zone crew and everybody who made this possible. Love all y'all. See you guys at Tin Roof after this.